I posted something several hours ago, actually early this morning. It was picked up by our friends at the Daily Signal. No, Republicans, the sky won't fall if there's a government shutdown. Hey, Republicans, the sky will not fall if there's a government shutdown. The government was shut down 6 times during Ronald Reagan's presidency. Over 20 times since 1974. Yet recent presidents have avoided it like the plague. The nation survived. Reagan won massive landslides, and in the end, the public didn't give a damn despite all the media Democrat Party hype at the time. The bureaucrats wound up getting their money. Social Security checks and Medicare checks continued without a hitch. So did veterans' benefits. The active military was unaffected. That is, truly essential government services were funded because they are specifically excluded from government shutdowns. Indeed, taxes keep rolling into the government's treasury. They don't stop. That never shuts down. There's plenty of revenue for basic government operations. But a shutdown does draw a line on what we call, or they call, discretionary spending. The government itself calls it non-essential spending, much of which, but not all, funds ideologically driven projects. And yes, it can cause temporary inconveniences for those visiting, let's say, national parks and so forth. Seems like a small sacrifice. In fact, it's a very, very small sacrifice. Many years ago on this radio show, budget guru and now Trump-hating never-Trumper Paul Ryan told me that the government never really shuts down. Indeed, he said when there is a so-called government shutdown, about 17% of the government actually shuts down. Remember that, Mr. Producer? And when you think of it, since the biggest entitlements are unaffected and they make up the overwhelming majority of government spending, well, that makes sense then, doesn't it? And by the way, no one, and I mean no one, will discuss reforming any of the big entitlement programs, not even the self-anointed fiscal conservatives. We're talking about a pittance in relative terms now. Nonetheless, the Republicans need to take a stand somewhere. At least it'll be a beginning. They should explain to the people that the Democrats and too many of their fellow Republicans spend, borrow, and steal like pirates, which will bankrupt the country for their children and grandchildren, further drive up inflation, including the cost of food, clothing, and energy, destroy the value of their paychecks and pension checks, eventually collapse the government altogether, and that this drug-like spending addiction must be broken before it's too late, which it already may be. The Republicans shouldn't act defensively or out of fear, but boldly and proudly. They should speak up and speak to the people. In a way, this is like the abortion issue. What, you ask? The Democrats and their D.C.-based media lied about abortion and exploited it and fear-mongered it in the last election in the belief they would ride it to victory. Their propaganda became more extreme and insane the closer to the election. They truly believed that they had an issue that would drive them to victory. It was pounded and pounded and pushed, but the people didn't buy it. Even more, there were much bigger issues about which the public cared. Well, the Democrats and their media lost in a landslide, didn't they? And it turned out that the tactics were of no consequence. The economy was the number one issue. Do the right thing, Republicans. It also happens to be good politics. You might actually get used to it. And stop destroying each other. Just get your collective act together and fight. This continuing resolution is just a baby step. Now, I want to say this to our friends who are making these decisions, taking a lot of shots at each other this afternoon. Settle down, everyone. About an hour ago, President Trump endorsed a new Republican plan and praised Speaker Johnson. Praised him. Excellent. Excellent. And I want to add that Chip Roy is a good and patriotic man. If they try and primary him, I will continue to support Chip Roy, as I support Speaker Johnson, as I support President Trump. We can work these things out if we stay focused on achieving our goals and principles. And the real enemy, that's the Marxist Democrats. They must be crushed. And the only way they're crushed is if we are united and stay united. and stick with our principles. Doesn't mean we'll get everything we want, even within the Republican Party, but we need to get a lot of it. So I support President Trump and his position. I support the Speaker and what he's tried to do now, and I support Chip Roy. And I will defend all three of them. Not because I'm a Pollyanna, because I want to win. And I want us to remember who the enemy is. And they are the enemy. We just won an election. We the people. We the people elected Donald Trump. We the people elected the Speaker of the House in his district. We the people elected Chip Roy. We're not here to pick one off after the other. That's how you lose wars, political and otherwise. So we'll see how this plays out further. We'll see how it goes. And, of course, the Democrats want to sabotage whatever's done. So beware of that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there have been two pieces written, one by the New York Times and today by the Wall Street Journal, and I'm talking about the news sections, on how Joe Biden had dementia, how Joe Biden could never have finished a second term, New York Times says, how Joe Biden's staff and others covered up for him. Isn't it sickening that they write these things now after this last election? Isn't it sickening that they didn't write it a year ago? Isn't it sickening that I came behind this microphone and on TV and on Blaze over and over again over the course of years, that I laid it out that he's at stage 5 out of stage 7 of dementia, and you didn't even need me to lay it out. You could see it yourself, the roaming around, the videos, the staring into Never Never Land, the gibberish and all the rest. We all know it. And those of us who have family members with Alzheimer's or dementia, we see it and we saw it. In the Wall Street Journal, how the White House functioned with a diminished Biden in charge. This needs to be underscored. Not just mentioned and then we run on to the drones or something. No. This is the most evil, diabolical offense committed against the American people by any political party, by any group of people. And as I told you many months ago, maybe years ago, historians will look back on this and condemn us. During the 2020 presidential primary, they write, Joe Biden campaigned so extensively across Iowa that she held events in more counties than her husband, a fact her press secretary at the time, Michael LaRosa, touted to a local reporter. His superior in the Biden campaign quickly chided him as the three rode in a minivan through the state's cornfields. Anthony Bernal, then a deputy campaign manager and chief of staff to Joe Biden, pressed LaRosa to contact the reporter again and play down any comparison in the campaign appearances between Joe Biden, then 77, and his wife, 8 years his junior. Her energetic schedule only highlights her husband's more plodding pace, LaRosa recalls being told. The message from Biden's team was clear. The more you talk her up, the more you make him look bad. The small correction foreshadowed how Biden's closest aides and advisors would manage the limitations of the oldest president in U.S. history during his 4 years in office. To adapt the White House around the needs of a diminished leader. Now look how this is now written about in a blasé way. A diminished leader, meaning mentally diminished. Dementia. In his first 4 years. And my God, they went ahead and they nominated him again until they pulled the rug out from under him. Kamala Harris, as I've said again and again, she lied to us. The cabinet lied to us. Pelosi lied. Schumer lied. Everybody who met with her, everybody who worked with her, they lied over and over and over again to us. The media lied to us. The media knew what was going on, but they lied to us. To adapt the White House around the needs of a diminished leader, they told visitors to keep meetings focused. Interactions with senior Democratic lawmakers and some cabinet members, including powerful secretaries such as Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, were infrequent or grew less frequent. Some legislative leaders had a hard time getting the president's ear at key moments, including ahead of the U.S. disastrous pullout from Afghanistan. This cost us lives. It cost us lives. And Milley knew it, and the other top brass at the Pentagon knew it, but they didn't say anything. They didn't do anything. Senior advisors were often put into roles that some administration officials and lawmakers thought Biden should occupy, with people such as National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Senior Counsel Steve Ricchetti, National Economic Council head Lyle Brownard, and her predecessor frequently in the position of being go-betweens for the president. They all covered up for him, and they still do. Press aides who compiled packages of news clips for Biden were told by senior staff to exclude negative stories about the president. The president wasn't talking to his own pollsters, as surveys showed him trailing in the 2024 race. Look at this. Look at this. Presidents always have gatekeepers, but in Biden's case, the walls around him were higher and the controls greater, according to Democratic lawmakers, donors, and aides who work for Biden and other administrations. There were limits over who Biden spoke with, limits on what they said to him, limits around the sources of information he consumed. It's the President of the United States, America. And throughout his presidency, a small group of aides stuck close to Biden to assist him, especially when traveling or speaking to the public. They body him to such a high degree. A person witnessed it said, adding that the hand-holding is unlike anything other recent presidents have had. This would be Kirby. Kirby. And the idiot. The White House operated this way even as the president and his aides pressed forward with his re-election bid, which unraveled spectacularly after his halting performance in a June debate with Donald Trump made his mental acuity an insurmountable issue. Vice President Kamala Harris replaced him, we know this, was decisively defeated by Trump in a shortened campaign. The account of how the White House functioned with an aging leader at the top of its organizational chart is based on interviews with nearly 50 people, including those who participated in or had direct knowledge of the operations. Many of those who criticized Biden's insularity said his system nonetheless kept this agenda on track, meaning this staff ran the country. As they do right now. White House spokesman Andrew Bates, this guy's a complete lowlife, said Biden earned the most accomplished record of any modern commander-in-chief and rebuilt the middle class because of his attention to policy details that impact millions of lives. Rebuilt the middle class? I think Bates has dementia. Bates, who rejected the notion that Biden has declined, added the president has often solicited opinions from outside experts, which has informed his policymaking. So you still have this guy Bates who's lying. Lying through his teeth. Said it's the job of senior White House staff to have high-level meetings regularly, and they were executing Biden's agenda in his direction. The guy's still full of crap. He also said the staff alerted the president to significant negative news. Burn all via the good days and bad days. The president's slide has been hard to overlook. While preparing last year for his interview with Robert Hur, the special counsel, the president couldn't recall lines that his team discussed with him at events. Aides often repeated instructions to him, such where to enter or exit a stage that would be obvious to the average person. Biden's team tapped campaign co-chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg, a Hollywood mogul, to find a voice coach to improve the president's fading warble. The system put Biden at an unusual remove from cabinet secretaries, the chairs of congressional committees, and other high-ranking officials. You know, the article goes on and on. And can you imagine what foreign leaders thought, especially our enemies? They knew what they were dealing with. The Democrat Party, the staffers, the cabinet, leading Democrats in Congress, the Washington, New York media, they lied to us, and they didn't care what peril they put the country in. They backed him up for re-election until it became obvious to every single soul in the world that he had dementia. These people, they betrayed us. They betrayed us.